Okay, hello everybody. Why don't we get started? Hi, my name is Jeff Bogonic. I am the Executive Director of the MBA Roundtable, and we're really pleased to have you all here to participate in this webinar. It's a series of webinars that we've been doing, and we're really pleased to do it in partnership with one of our affiliate sponsors, EduSource, so it's great to have you here. We all know that it was a long night last night, so we still see that some people are still logging in, and so welcome, and we hope to see more of you as attend. Today's presentation is going to be recorded, so just some housekeeping information. We'll be using question and polling during our session, so we want to keep it as interactive as possible. You all should see the right-hand side of your GoToWebinar a menu, so you see where the polling will pop up, as well as there will be a chat session. So if you have any questions during the session, please fill out and submit your questions to that question and chat feature, and we'll be getting towards those at the end of the session. Just a little bit about, I want to go ahead and talk about the MBA Roundtable. For those of you who may not know about the MBA Roundtable, we're a global association of business schools, and we work together to inform and inspire MBA curriculum and programmatic innovation. We really do that through a couple of things. Our big event every year is our annual Curricular Innovation Symposium. We do research, webinars like this, and a white paper. And every other year we sponsor our Innovative Award program, and the next award will be given in 2017. We do this also through some really strategic partnerships that we have. So if we move to the next slide, we do that through GMAC. You probably all heard of GMAC, EFMD, the Part-Time MBA Affinity Group, of course AACSB, and then the Executive MBA Council. And I'll mention just a little bit of information about our symposiums, because we just had our symposium a few weeks ago. So just some little bit of history. A couple years ago we were in Madrid, so our title was MBA 2020. Last year we were at WashU, and our theme was Cultivating Communication Competency. And just basically 2 weeks ago we were in Tempe, Arizona at ASU. So, and we discussed a very difficult topic of reimagining MBA education, weaving business acumen and leadership into the MBA curriculum, which is a perfect lead into where we'll be going next and covering this topic. So with that, I'm really pleased to turn it over to Sandra Laughlin, who is the Director, Office of Transformational Learning at Smith School, and she's going to talk to you about some of the really amazing things they're doing at that institution. Thanks, Sandra.
Thanks, Jeff, and good afternoon, everyone. Thanks for joining us. It's been a rockin' 24 hours, so it's nice to connect with you all on a topic that I'm sure all of us care a great deal about. I want to talk a very little bit about the Smith School and how we have been engaged in this space. So I'm sure, like many of you, we have a long history of experiential learning in our MBA and our undergrad programs at the Smith School. There are many faculty that engage in these programs, a number of research centers, and so we've been thinking a lot about this. But again, like many of you, our experiential programs have been pretty variable and not as coordinated as maybe they could have been. And so about a year ago, our Office of Transformational Learning was developed, and one of the key facets of what we do here is to focus on experiential learning. So we do a number of other things that are related to transformational learning, faculty coaching, executive communications. We oversee the assurance of learning process and blended and online and flipped instruction. But a key facet of our efforts has been in the experiential learning space. And so once we were formed and got going, the first thing that we were asked to do is to wrap our arms around what was happening at the school and identify opportunities to grow and strengthen our portfolio. And so we began reaching out to faculty and to centers and also to employers and other units across the school to determine kind of what we were already doing and how we could improve upon that. And what we found very quickly was that experiential learning was a term used by many, but not necessarily in the same fashion. So, we saw all of these different things faculty or staff considered to be experiential, and they were highly variable. So everything from external consulting engagements to current events discussions in the classroom were being described as experiential learning. So what we first decided we needed to do was to settle on a definition of what is experiential learning at the Smith School. So after a number of conversations and dialogues internally and with external partners, we hit upon this definition. So this may be very comparable to what you have at your schools. The idea of assessing complex problems, delivering innovative solutions is, I think, relatively common. What may be less common for you and something that we ended up coming to are the bookends of this definition. So for us at the Smith School, experiential learning in the way that I'm discussing it today are in-curricular opportunities, so classes, things that faculty have oversight on, things that students receive credit for. And the other piece of it is that for us, experiential learning means engaging in a dynamic relationship with an external partner. So instead of just identifying innovative solutions to problems, we think that it's important for our students to actually communicate those to management and receive feedback on them. So we wanted to ask you, as you're thinking about your experiential portfolio, there are a lot of things that students can develop. And the question is, which of these is most important to you? So go ahead, the poll is out now. Please identify what you think is most important for you in this space. Okay. All right, so it looks like we had a great response rate. So what I see here is, and you can see it too, is the decision-making aspect of experiential learning is something that almost half of you identified as the most significant thing. It's kind of interesting to see that the nice split amongst the others. So of course, all of these are important, and I think that the aspect of decision making is what is probably one of the most difficult things to teach. Communications can be taught, confidence can be coached, creativity is also challenging, collaboration can be coached. But helping students understand when to make a decision, the kinds of information that needs to be brought to bear to make an informed decision is something that's actually very challenging to do. And so it's something that we also, at the Smith School care very much about. I hope some of you saw this article. It was so timely because it relates perfectly to the topic of conversation today. But earlier, like last week, the Wall Street Journal published this great article highlighting the Tippie School, where it talked about how schools are moving toward what they call messy, real-time corporate issues in their classrooms, as opposed to relying entirely on the traditional Harvard case. And I just, in our conversations here, this article got shared widely, and we loved this description, messy and real-time, because that really does represent, in many ways, what we are trying to build into our curriculum. And after this article came out, and even before with different terms, we had begun to think about what really makes a problem messy. And we've hit upon two different kind of components of what makes real problems in real time messy and so challenging for companies and for students to resolve. And the first is just the idea of having to solve a legitimately complex problem. a problem where there is no solution. There's maybe 4, or maybe there are 5 bad options, and you have to choose amongst those to pick the least bad option. And so giving students practice and development and support around that is really critical. But it's not enough. That's not, at least for us, what we define as a really messy real-time issue. For us, a really messy problem has another component, and it is the requirement to manage the dynamism of real-life challenges, the people, the project, the timeline, your team, your manager, politics. All of these things are hallmarks of real problems faced by real organizations. And so when we're thinking about experiential learning at the Smith School, those are the 2 pieces of our experiential portfolio that we really have identified as being critical for us to acknowledge and support students in developing competencies toward those. So we were sitting around a table one day and talking about this question, like asking how can we develop both parts? And someone said, we need an acronym. And somebody else said, wouldn't it be great if it actually matched on to the fearless marketing strategy that's being used at the university as a whole? And we spent about 5 minutes and said, oh, that's just too hard to do. And we went away. And then a week later, in a caffeinated, induced, I don't know, stroke of insight, we figured out how to make it work. And it's been something that has been a really terrific resource for us internally to communicate with faculty and staff and students what we mean by fearless leadership in complex business spaces. So we created what we call the Fearless Framework, and it has 2 parts. The first part is the process that students go through to solve a complex business problem, and the second part is the strategies required to manage dynamic people and projects. And so I'm going to walk through each of those pieces for you now to get a sense of what those are and how they play out for us. The first is, the F in FEAR is focus. So what this means is at the start of a project, students work with their client, with their manager, with their teammates to understand what is the problem that needs to be solved and what are the resources in the company, on the team, at the school that should be brought to bear to address that problem. So identifying what needs to be done and what is available to do it. The next step is to explore the space. We call it opening up the problem space. So this might be collecting data, either quantitative, qualitative, or both, talking to subject matter experts, benchmarking against similar organizations or similar problems that have been felt before, and just figuring out what is there and what needs to be created in order to resolve the issue that's been identified. The third step in the process is analysis, putting all those pieces together, weighing them, prioritizing them, adjudicating them, and coming to a clear understanding of the components of the problem and how those relate to one another. The last step in the complex business problem solution for us is the R, recommend and reflect. So recommendations are the ones that are given to the client or the manager, and reflections are the post-mortem where students look back on their process. They receive feedback, they solicit feedback on their problem solution process so that the next time they go through a similar challenge, either in the classroom or on the job, they have learned from their experience. The next piece of our Fearless framework is about managing the dynamism of real challenges. So this is not as much a process as it is a pieces that occur at every stage along the process of business solution. So the first is to listen. I'm not sure about you, but I have heard of instances where groups of students have gone to a client, gotten an idea, spent an entire term building a phenomenal project that solves a problem the client didn't have. And so what we do is teach our students to come to every interaction with their clients, with their team, with their manager, with their subject matter expert in a mode of listening, evaluative, thoughtful listening, where they try to understand what the client's needs are and with an open mind process what those are rather than waiting, rather than listening for what they think the solution already is. The next piece is related, but it's empathy. So it's understanding even the people with whom you don't necessarily get to speak, other stakeholders in the business problem, and putting yourself in their position, adjudicating the information and the recommendations and the challenges from their point of view, from the user point of view, from the manager point of view, from the line worker point of view. It also relates to how we try to teach students to interact with each other on their teams. In practice, as you know, stuff happens. People's lives change, issues change, and so it's important to balance that empathy and being responsive and and reflective with teammates with the need to drive a project forward. The third piece of the less aspect of our framework is set and satisfy expectations. It's really critical to us, as I'm sure it is to you, that students, when they are engaging with clients, clearly identify what will be delivered, and then they ensure that that is delivered appropriately. So teaching students how to scope a project, communicate that scope, and meet the challenges of that agreed upon time frame and project are a really essential piece of what we teach and expect from students. The last piece of our Fearless framework is socialize. We never want our students' projects or in the workplace anyone going to a manager having not really thought through as best they could the recommendations that they're presenting. So we teach our students to talk to each other, talk to their manager, talk to their faculty mentor, talk to a subject matter expert, look on the internet, to put their ideas out there and get feedback on them so that when the big recommendation meeting occurs, that the client has an idea that it was coming, has already thought a little bit about what that means, so that the students' ideas and their work is most meaningful and useful for the client. So that was the Fearless framework. It's something, as I mentioned, that we have gotten pretty excited about. Our students are excited about it. It helps them feel a sense of connection and an awareness of all the nuances required to successfully engage with problems. And so we are happy to say that with our framework, students feel, forgive the pun, fearless about resolving the messy real-time corporate issues in our experiential projects and hopefully on the job after graduation. So I wanted to again punch it back to you and ask to reflect, based on what we've described here, to think about your own organization and your own experiential learning platform. So would you say that you teach problem solving, dynamic management? How do you balance those in your programs? I'm very curious to hear your input. Okay, great. Thank you. So what I'm seeing is about 40% of people report their program as being fairly balanced. And that's great. I'm so glad that it makes me feel good that we're kind of on the same page, that we're all working together to resolve this. And so, you know, I do see that 24%, about a quarter of you, is focused primarily on problem solving. It's awesome, actually, to see that almost 20% of people say that they focus mainly on the dynamic management. I think that is probably underrepresented in most curriculum. So it's awesome that 1/5 of you are already kind of in that space. So what I wanted to do now is talk about what this has meant for us in how we are thinking about our entire program. And so, you know, this again, this insight that the real-time messiness includes, at least for us, these two big pieces, made us kind of stop and think and realize that messiness kind of exists on a continuum. And we began to think about what is kind of foundational to helping students resolve that messiness, and then what kinds of engagements we can provide in our experiential learning portfolio and throughout the curriculum to help students get to the top of that pyramid with success. So what we've been doing the past few months is actually laying our existing experiential learning portfolio over top of this pyramid so that we can understand kind of where we are and then make some decisions about where we'd like to be. So I'm going to walk you through what we have at each of these levels and how we are thinking about them. So at the base of our foundation, this is not experiential learning because again, for us, that requires a dynamic interaction between an organization and students. But we view it, the traditional case, the Harvard cases, you know, business simulations, as being completely within the zone of what we care about from an experiential learning perspective. These are situations and opportunities for students to practice the problem solving, to see challenges that have been resolved before, and to get an inkling of what they need to bring to bear to resolve problems with and for an external organization. So I loved the Wall Street Journal article, but for the Smith School, we disagree with the idea that the Harvard case is passé. Instead, we see it as a key foundational aspect of the work that is built above it. The next piece of our experiential portfolio is are cases that occur in classrooms. They're 1 day or 2 days, but they're actually with and for real companies in real time. So there are two different pieces of this that we have really started to build out of the Smith School. And the first is in collaboration with an organization actually called Real Time Cases. And I know that Jennifer from RTC will talk a little bit more about this. But their platform has been really phenomenal for us. I mean, in short, they go to CEOs and other business leaders and say, what's keeping you up at night? What challenges are you experiencing? What issues would you love input to resolve? And then they put together case materials and present those to students in a really fascinating and engaging platform. And what's so great about these cases is that they are, as the name implies, they're real and they're in real time. So these are things that have not been resolved. Students can't Google the answers to them. They're happening now. And that creates this really energizing experience for students because they know that this is something that is current and valuable. We've also built upon that idea with what we're calling the Smith Live cases. So these are opportunities where we engage with our corporate partners, with employers, with alumni, to work with our office and with faculty to build a case within the core courses in our program. So it's like a 75-minute case. Students get the materials beforehand in the classroom. They are actively working in small groups to resolve the issue The company is there. People are walking around the room, pushing students' thinking, saying, well, did you think about that? Or what about this? And then at the end, the company provides the big reveal of what they did or what in this situation they would do. And this has been another terrific win-win for our program. Students love it, faculty love it, and the partner companies love it too because they enjoy that face-to-face time with students. And we've been very fortunate to work with a number of terrific organizations, Target, Unilever, Mattel, SCNH, Deloitte, and it's something that we will continue to build in our portfolio because what we find is that it provides that real-time messiness in a supported and constrained way that gives students the ability to practice and get feedback on their ideas, but not putting them out with too much exposure too soon. The next level is what we're calling the medium level of messiness. Oops, sorry. And this is where we have fund management, case competitions for credits, internships for credits, and what we call Smith Living cases, which are extended live cases. So when the company comes in 3 or 4 times over the term, and the case is extended, but the students are not going to the organization, the org is coming to us. And at the tippy top of our pyramid here are what we call the high messiness, the things where students are out in an organization, they don't have as much of a support structure, they're fully exposed, as are we, as is the organization, and so the relationship management piece is so critical and so important. This has, as many of you know, all of you know, there are many moving parts to this. All of these parts need to work well for the case to be successful and for companies and students to have a great interaction. And so we've recently partnered with EduSource, who's another sponsor of this session, to help us help our students best manage those relations, manage the dynamic team relations, the client relationships, and to put a good face on our project and help students really get the most out of the experience. So again, this was just a quick overview of what we're doing and thinking about at the Smith School. We have really benefited, I think, from a little bit of that kind of strategic thinking and really stepping back and looking at our portfolio, thinking about the real-time messiness, what that means, what students need to be successful, and then thinking about the opportunities that we can provide within the curriculum to make that happen. It's also been really helpful for us to think very specifically for us about the less part of the framework. We found that our students walk out with terrific analytic skills, but we want them to actually get better at the soft management, dynamism related skills and competencies. So it's really helped to kind of focus our energies in that space. The other thing that that our reflection has allowed us to do is recognize and think strategically about our program and about our resources, and in particular to identify valuable partners within our organization, within our network, and other technology and software partners to help us really maximize the effectiveness of our curriculum for students and for companies with whom they work after graduation. So with that, I want to let you know that we'd love to get, I would personally love to get your feedback and your thoughts. So there's on your screen on the right side, there's a little question button. As we finish out kind of the EduSource and real-time cases, we'll talk a little bit about their platforms and how they function. While they're doing that if you have questions or feedback, thoughts, ideas, please type them into that space, and then we'll have time for a little bit of Q&A at the end. And now I'll turn it over to Jennifer from Real-Time Cases.
Thank you, MBA Roundtable, and also thank you so much, Sandra, for taking time out of your schedule to share your experiential learning framework. We are super excited to be a part of this and helping you create fearless leaders. My name is Jennifer Stecklow, and I'm the Director of Learning Solutions at Real-Time Cases. The Learning Solutions team's primary focus is to help faculty and administrators like Dr. Laughlin fit real business challenges into their curriculum and learning outcomes. And we do this at the individual course level as well as department-wide. So as Dr. Laughlin was speaking earlier, you can see Real-Time Cases is inside of the real-time messiness of the low frame there, as we specialize in creating classroom-ready video cases from our interviews with executive teams who are sharing current business challenges that they are facing in their organization. These are real companies. They have real issues that are primarily designed to help students develop those decision-making skills that they're going to need to approach and solve messy business challenges in today's landscape. So right now, currently, in our database, we have over 185 cases with just over 40 partner companies. We also work with just over 80 universities that are both domestic and internationally as well. Some of our most popular cases, I thought we'd like to share some of them with you. The first one's from Kind, and it's about exploring how to maintain company culture when your workforce has grown over 425% over the last 3 years and has moved to be primarily remote. Also from Red Peg Marketing, this is on how to deal with a client who triple bids your creative ideas to other agencies as well as competitors. From Team Liquid, we're exploring how to create a post-gaming retirement package for employees who retire in their mid-20s. And finally, Wedding Wire's exploration into the opportunities as they look to expand their business globally. What makes us unique is both in our content is very flexible, but there's so many creative and different ways to bring it into education. And we've seen quite a few educational outcomes that I just wanted to share a couple with you. First off, at Virginia Tech, we created custom material for one of the business core courses that spans over 16 sections. This provided faculty the opportunity to not only study a local company and content that we customly created for them, but provide students with the same experience in all sections. At Cal Poly San Luis Obispo, we have a faculty member there who likes to use our cases to mimic what it's like to get an assignment from a CEO. So these are micro cases that are timed, and for her, that supports her learning outcomes. We're also helping National Louis University bring more experiential learning into their curriculum as they are completely redesigning their business their business programs. At American University, they are using cases for in-class case competitions. And at Georgetown, our material is helping support entrepreneurship curriculum, so students are learning about real challenges startups face before they either start their own or join one. And finally, at Hartwick College, we had a group of students who actually worked on a term project and created a brand new social media marketing plans for a number of our partner companies. So we're on a mission to help faculty fit real business challenges into their classroom, and we're going to be reaching out to everyone who's RSVP'd for this webinar, but if you want more information before that time, simply go to our website, realtimecases.com, and you'll learn more there. Thank you, and I'll go ahead and pass this over to David.
Thank you, Jennifer. My name is David Comisford, and I am the founder of EduSourced. I want to thank Dr. Laughlin as well for this session. I think this is really interesting information and some novel stuff that I haven't heard previously, so hopefully this has been helpful for everyone. I'm going to talk a little bit about our software platform and the role we play at Maryland and some other schools. So when you look at the messiness index, if you could think of it as that, and that Saunders presented, we're really at the top or the capstone of this pyramid. So we're looking at projects where there is a client component to a team-based project, a team of students solving a real business challenge, but working hand in hand with the company to do that. So we don't do as much at the other stages of the pyramid. We're really at that experiential project. It's an action learning project, external consulting project, as it's been coined here today, and some of you may call these simply capstone projects. They are the messiest projects to interact with, and yet, maybe ironically, often the least supported by technology. There are so many moving parts around these client-based projects, and I think in some cases, at some schools we spoke with, it can even be occasionally overwhelming. For the most part, schools are running these projects and doing a terrific job delivering results for the client companies. But really, when these projects are happening, there's so much investment for time and energy on the student's behalf. It's often the most demanding course on the faculty behalf and the school's behalf to align and get these companies to the table to do these projects and to deliver the results. It's an enormous opportunity for, I'll go back one slide if you would. It's a enormous opportunity for student exposure to the project sponsors, and so much work is going into it, and yet for most schools I think there's not a lot of data to show for the result, and there's often not a consistent experience for the project sponsors. These programs are historically have been organized ad hoc, and I think that's because there hasn't been technology available, and that's why we developed EduSource. We help schools demonstrate the impact that these projects are having on the students and clients. We don't take credit for that impact. I think clearly that belongs to the work that the students and their faculty are delivering. But what we do is help them demonstrate with data that, yes, there is a high impact result here. When you look at the outcomes section on this slide, it's nearly an 11% improvement to students' professional development as determined by our pre and post project skills assessment. We also do client assessment, student 360 assessment with the peers on the teams, and then even getting into looking at what are the long-term impacts of these projects with survey automation with clients and students long after the project was done, because we found with these messy client-based projects, it often takes time to demonstrate impact. It's not all fully realized at the end of the project. It takes time for the student to get off into the workforce and realize that, yes, they use this example of their experiential project in, for example, their interview. So we try to help the schools capture that information. And you can see there have been a couple thousand projects run through our platform. If you want to advance to the next slide, a typical issue that we run into from faculty and program staff is that there isn't one place they can go to look at their projects, understand where they are, dial in and look at the collaboration that's happening between the client, for example, so that relationship being so important between the client and the student team. So we've created a dashboard to organize the program. We've attempted top to bottom, so everything from getting the students into the system and matched to projects all the way to having really what we think is a complete archive of projects, project outcomes, a lot of the survey data and outcome data we talked about, but even reviewing things like documentation that went along with a project, like an NDA having been signed. I mean, those are the kind of things that can often get lost. And so what we wanted to offer was for schools to have the ability, either at the department level, the course level, or all the way out to the college level, to create a little bit more consistency with how these projects are handled, even though we do recognize that there are differences from course to course and concentration to concentration, so the projects have to be uniquely handled. But if I'm a client company engaging with the school doing a project, to have a consistency of experience. So that has been our goal. If you're interested in learning more about what we do and the specifics of our platform, we're going to have a session at 1 p.m. on November 22nd. When this webinar is completed, you'll have the ability to check a box if you want to know more, and it will get you registered for that time. So if you're interested and want to learn more, we'd love to have you. Thank you so much for coming to this session. I'm going to turn it over to Sandra to deal with Q&A. It looks like we have several questions already queued up that we can address.
Thanks, David. Sorry, guys, I'm looking for those questions.
And Sandra, I can go ahead and read these to you. I've got them in front of me. One of the questions that came in is, how are you preparing students for the projects? So, and this came in halfway through the session, so it's not clear which type of project, but I guess how are you getting the students ready to complete projects?
Well, so part of it is, well, a large part of it is now getting them into the, again, the lower levels of of experiential learning, doing a lot of practicing with that, but and that will help them understand what what kinds of projects they might be experiencing, the level of performance required. But honestly, a big part of what we're doing is having difficult conversations with students before they get into like the top level of the pyramid, to help them understand like what really is required for success in these programs, what kinds of attention, what kind of time resources are necessary, because we want them to make a good choice for themselves and for our clients. And then there's a tremendous amount of development and support that occurs throughout the projects, because, I mean, as you all know, talking about how to manage up is way easier in theory than it is in practice. The same with working with teammates. We talk about this a lot, but until we put students together with a challenging problem where they have to work on their interpersonal challenges as well as the project challenges, it's so theoretical that they might not always understand. So throughout the projects, I think, is where students get so much of that support and development. It's kind of just-in-time teaching, and that's been really very, very effective for us, and we've gotten phenomenal feedback from students with that approach.
And we have another question, maybe thematically similar. Can you clarify once again the difference between level 2 messiness, so the Smith Live cases, for example, and the level 4 messiness, so the external consulting, for example?
Absolutely. So I'll use Target as an example. So Target came into with what we call our Smith Live case. Target came into the classroom. They worked with my office and with faculty on a case relating to how to motivate employees in the workplace. And this was, without Target, that would have been a case that we would have used, an old Harvard case. But we wanted to see if we can talk about what real managers at Target were experiencing with trying to manage people that were older than them, that were not salaried workers, that had young children, all of these different management challenges. And so Target actually physically came to the school, came into the classroom, and met with all the different sections of that course, and spent 75 minutes with students working through a case that had been developed. They walked around the room, they pushed students' thinking. They said, well, that idea is great, but how would it impact this, or the bottom line, or logistics, and it was just it was a terrific interaction, but it was a 175-minute session with each group of students. In contrast, we've worked with companies at the top of the pyramid over an entire 15-week term or a 7-week term where the students are going out to that organization. They're spending multiple days there. They spend weeks and weeks on this project, and so the difference is in the level of an interaction and the messiness of that problem. So the motivating employees problem was not simple, but we didn't spend 3 weeks trying to actually resolve the issue. Whereas if that Target case had been at the top of our pyramid, our students would have been in the stores interviewing employees, interviewing managers, interviewing frontline workers, understanding what were their challenges, and then coming back to management with a lot more data and a lot more thought out and supported recommendations.
Thanks, Sandra. The next question is, what would you consider the biggest blocker to the adoption of cases or traditional Harvard cases, or maybe even the video cases from RTC in your wider higher education environment?
That's a great question. I often ponder this myself. I would say a lot of it is just is comfort, faculty comfort, and student comfort with open-ended ambiguity. Of course, in practice, that's what everyone expects. That is what should be expected. But from a student in the classroom, if they can get by with the lecture, often they sometimes prefer that because it's easier. And in some cases, faculty are more comfortable with that. They may have spent less time in industry and are less familiar with the nuances. and sometimes it's just easier to walk into a classroom and lecture because you're so confident on that information, and it's how you've been taught and what you've experienced. And so changing that and starting to move the needle on that for us has been about providing guidance and support, feedback, and telling students, listen, we're doing this because we want you to be successful when you walk out the door. We expect that. You've come to us because that's what you expect from us, and we're going to give you the experiences and the support structure and the expectation to get to that point.
Okay, so it looks like we have time for one more question, and this is maybe a big one. Now we just got another question, so it scrolled off my screen. Give me a second. Okay, so how have faculty responded to your 4 levels of messiness? Do certain kinds of faculty, or are they more engaged with a certain level? So for example, tenure system with foundational or clinical versus, the folks that maybe aren't tenure track being more engaged in the high messiness. What can we learn about engaging faculty with experiential learning from your experience in developing an experiential learning definition and then this kind of guide of messiness?
So, this is an ongoing effort here, so I don't want to paint the picture that we have it all right. We are just like you in the process of really developing and expanding and supporting our own efforts. But I will say the faculty response to this has been, frankly, it's been pretty extraordinary. And I think a lot of that is because of the support that's provided by our office. So, so much of the challenge of experiential learning is the time it takes to make the connections with those external organizations. And once you have gotten those connections, then getting those people to devote the time and the energy and the thought to creating a case that is appropriate and meaningful for students, and then engaging with them throughout the process, however long that process is. And so our office has been instrumental in all of those pieces of helping to make the connections, build the relationships, in many cases help to build the cases. We have instructional designers on staff who just work on building these cases so that they meet the expectations of the faculty member and are appropriate for the client and are really engaging for the students. So because of that support structure and because we have taken the more strategic approach to thinking about our portfolio, I have to say we have, I think, been tremendously successful in this space. And it's very exciting to be here at the Smith School now for students, for faculty, and certainly for us. We're seeing such growth and excitement around experiential learning, and it's kind of awesome.
So I realize I just said time for one more question, but one additional one did come in, and it's something we haven't covered a lot, so I'm just going to toss this out if we could quickly address. For the top of the pyramid, sometimes students need support from faculty subject matter experts to provide guidance. How can we build that into the plan to ensure students know where to go to get that support?
That is a great question, and we do, so that part, in the Fearless framework, the first part is the F, the focus. When students are presented with a case, one of the first things that they do is they look inside and outside the building for subject matter experts. And so there's a number of different models that we use, but students have to look at the research or experience of the faculty that we have, as well as our alumni and other partners, and to identify at least one, in many cases more, SMEs to help them think through the challenges as part of that socialization structure. We float the ideas with those people before presenting them to our clients. And so, of course that requires the faculty to buy in, and so there are challenges and opportunities in that space. But in practice, as an employee in a firm, you're not given a list of go talk to these 5 people. Often you're given a challenge, and and you need to learn how to identify resources to help you resolve that issue. And so we build that into our experiential offering because we think that while it's somewhat more challenging for students in the long term, it is a critical piece of learning that we want students to get from the experience, and so we expect them to do that and provide them support to do it well.
Okay, thank you, Sandra. I know we're a couple minutes after, so I will turn it over to Jeff. Jeff, if you want to talk a little bit about what's coming up next for MBA Roundtable before we wrap up.
Thanks, David, and thanks, Sandra, and thanks, Jennifer. It was amazing. It's great to see such innovation coming from our schools, and great to see what great tools we now are available for schools to deliver on those experiential learning opportunities. So thank you, everybody, for attending. I was going to pick on Sandra for actually mentioning the Wall Street Journal article because being called on the last minute to be interviewed for that was very funny, and TIPI isn't giving up cases, they just are going further in your direction, so they'll probably be in touch with you, Sandra, to see how you're doing it. And of course, we have some more webinars upcoming, and our last one for this year is coming up on November the 29th. Talk School of Business is talking about it and talking about the challenges now in the volatile world of doing global experiences. So that's everything we have. Look forward to the survey at the end of this when you complete the webinar, and thanks again. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you, everyone.